The Poisoned Coca-Cola Murders 1977. A New Year's Tragedy and the First Victim. It was midnight on January 4, 1977. Showa 52. 6 employees of the Shinkansen buffet service had just finished their shift near Shinagawa Station in Tokyo and were heading back to their company dormitory. They crossed the Daiichi Kihin National Route and passed a public phone booth next to a skating center in Takanawa 4-chome, Minato Ward. That's when one member of the group noticed a 10-yen coin dropped near the phone booth. Pushing open the folding door of the phone booth, they saw a single regular-size 190 ml bottle of Coca-Cola lying on the floor. In that era, glass bottles were still the standard. The cap was still on, suggesting someone had forgotten it while making a call. "Lucky find, go ahead and keep it," a coworker urged. One female employee declined, saying, "I don't want a Coke," and passed the bottle to the youngest part-timer in the group, 16-year-old high school student Akira Higaki. Akira was a first-year high school student from Kyoto, using his winter break to work as a waiter in the Shinkansen dining car. Around 1 a.m., after returning to the dormitory and bathing, Akira retrieved the Coke he had left in the dining room after watching his friends finish their beers in the recreation room. He popped the cap and was about to drink it in one gulp. "This Coke is rotten." Akira immediately spat out the Coke and rinsed his mouth with water. However, barely 5 minutes after ingesting the beverage, Akira suddenly collapsed. He fell face down, his fists clenched, already unconscious. Akira was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after 7:30 a.m. The autopsy revealed the presence of an extremely potent poison in his system. The second victim and the chain of terror. Upon grasping the situation, Takanawa Police Station sent the Coke bottle from the scene to the Metropolitan Police Department's forensic laboratory for analysis. The contents of the bottle tested positive for a lethal dose of poison. An even more horrifying discovery was made approximately 600 meters from the first location. Around 8:15 a.m., an office worker found a middle-aged man in work clothes collapsed on the sidewalk along the Daiichi Kihin National Route, heading north. He was rushed to the hospital but was already dead. The man was Hiroshi Sugawara, 46, originally from Shimonoseki City. After being displaced during the war, he worked in forestry, but his life was marked by theft and small-time scams, fleeing and remaining unaccounted for over 13 years. His identity was ironically confirmed by fingerprints taken during a previous arrest. With no external injuries and few possessions, the body was initially treated as a simple case of a man collapsing in the street and was sent to the Tokyo Medical Examiner's office. However, during the administrative autopsy, a powerful poison reaction was detected in his remains. The Metropolitan Police re-examined the location where Sugawara collapsed hereafter, Scene 2. They found traces of vomit on the spot where the body lay. About 100 meters away, under a telephone pole, they found a capless Coca-Cola bottle, about 70% full. Scratches suggesting the cap had been pried open were even found on the guardrail. Lethal poison was detected in the contents of this bottle, as well as on the cap found nearby. The scattered poison and the fear of imitation. The police strongly suspected that other poisoned Cokes had been scattered and mobilized officers from neighboring stations for an emergency search of the entire area. Around 12:50 p.m., an investigator found a capped, regular-size Coke bottle placed on the shelf of a red public phone outside the Nagatani store in Kitoshinagawa, Shinagawa Ward, approximately 600 meters from Scene 1 hereafter, Scene 3. Forensic analysis confirmed the presence of an extremely potent poison within this bottle as well. The Coke at Scene 3 had been discovered moments earlier by a local middle school student, identified as Student A. Thirsty. He reached for it but thought the top portion of the liquid looked strangely pale. Being in a hurry, he decided against drinking it. When he returned 10 minutes later, investigators were already examining the bottle, and Student A realized he had narrowly escaped the deadly poison. Another person had a near miss at the first scene as well. About 50 minutes before Akira picked up the Coke, around 11:10 p.m., a middle school student, Student B, who lived nearby, entered the phone booth and picked up the bottle lying on the floor. A little coke leaked from a gap in the cap, wetting his thumb and index finger. He impulsively licked his fingers but, finding a strong bitter taste, decided not to drink it and placed the coke back down on the floor. Identifying the toxin and the crime zone. Detailed analysis by the Metropolitan Police Forensic Laboratory identified the poison as sodium cyanide. This substance is a designated deadly poison under the Poisonous and Deleterious Substances Control Law, with a minuscule lethal dose. Though generally difficult to obtain, it is essential for metal plating and metallurgy. The factory belt stretching from the crime scene area towards Kawasaki and Yokohama contained numerous plating facilities. The three crime scenes were concentrated within a tight radius of 300 meters from Shinagawa Station. Scene 1 Akira Higaki, the concentration is unknown, but it was certainly above a lethal dose. Scene 2 Hiroshi Sugawara, 70% of the contents remained, but a concentration approximately 10 times the lethal dose was detected. Scene 3 Attempted, an astonishing concentration of approximately 60 times the lethal dose was detected. The investigation strongly suggested that the perpetrator had been preparing and testing the crime for over a month and a half. Since mid-November the previous year, over a dozen people had witnessed full Coke bottles placed in planters or phone booths. Furthermore, those bottles were seen moved 5 to 10 meters away after a few days. There was even a witness report of a child, possibly elementary school age, picking up a Coke and dropping and breaking it, only for a new Coke to be replenished at the same spot 2 days later. Investigators concluded that the culprit was observing and testing the reaction of passers-by to the abandoned bottles. Investigative limits and the statute of limitations. The most significant clues were the 3 remaining Coke bottles and 4 caps, yet not a single fingerprint was recovered. The caps bore a mark, T, indicating the manufacturing plant, but this provided no conclusive information beyond the fact that they accounted for only 4 out of 9 million caps produced. Newspaper reports at the time proposed 2 profiles for the perpetrator. One view suggested the culprit was someone socially marginalized, channeling their everyday resentment into an act of violence during the festive New Year period. This was seen as a warped psychological backlash against society, similar to the phenomenon of sulfuric acid being splashed on furosode formal kimonos several years prior. Another view hypothesized that the perpetrator, having accidentally obtained the deadly sodium cyanide, was merely experimenting to test its toxicity. The use of Coke, popular among young people, led to the strong suspicion that the perpetrator was middle-aged or younger, possibly a youth. Since sodium cyanide was widely used in plating factories, someone working or formerly working at such a facility was suggested as a possibility. However, the investigation proved immensely challenging, and the case ultimately went unsolved. On January 4, 1992 Heisei 4, 15 years after the incident, the statute of limitations expired. This incident left a profound scar of indiscriminate terror on Japanese society, which was then undergoing the proliferation of vending machines. Following the murders, beverage vending machines were swiftly removed, and those that remained were equipped with countermeasures to prevent toxin tampering, fundamentally shaking the public's perception of safety.